Well, now that everything's apart, I'll talk about a couple things I've done to make everything kind of work here. So this is an off-the-shelf Bilstein unit for the first gen Honda CR-V. Had it revalved for spring rate and the car's weight, but other than that, straight off the shelf, it'll bolt right into the car. And so I could do that, I added these lengthen the turrets. Let's see if I can get it better. Yeah. So they're 3 inches taller than stock, and that let me bolt these straight in. No other modifications necessary. The other unit is a Cusco 02 kit for an Integra Type R. It's a DC2, I guess. And because I've got the longer turrets, I had to add the spacer, and the actual spacer isn't long enough. I would have liked to have I think that's a 2-inch spacer, 2.5-inch spacer. I was shooting for a 3, but they shipped me the wrong one. Ended up using it anyway because I wanted to drive the car, and it's all maxed out. I can't make it any longer, and it sits a little on the low side for what I was hoping for. Basically what ends up happening is the axle rubs on the exhaust, and sometimes the exhaust gets pushed up into the body there, right? So it's kind of self-clearancing as we go along. I didn't necessarily have to make the modification to the turret to make the all-wheel drive work. That was just purely because I wanted to run the CR-V, get the longer travel out of the CR-V strut. I think it's Type R. Lower control arm, again to run the CR-V unit, as opposed to stock would have been the fork, you know, a solid arm with a fork going around it, the cast thing. Off the shelf Civic wagon axle. I think this is the long side. On the wagon, one side is longer than the other, and I want to say the driver's side is the long side and the passenger side is the short side. I ended up using both driver sides in this car, and actually they were hair long. I could use to have it a little bit shorter. At full compression, the axle ends up just pushing itself into the diff, and it gets real noisy and unhappy. Whatever. I don't have a rag handy. Differential is well, it's not stock. The housing stock Civic wagon put the OBX helical limited slip LSD in it. It needed a little massaging to make it work, but it fit. And I've got a new oil leak from somewhere. I need to figure that one out as I put it all back together. Now that I have the arms off, it would be a good time to pop the axles and take a look at that and see where that's coming from. But it's a project for another day, maybe another video. So to get this all to fit and work, the big modification was the moving the rear cross member. I had to push that back. God, I don't know if that was 1 inch or 2 inches. Let's see if I can grab my light here. We can kind of see where it used to be versus where it is now. Those are some boogery ass welds. Let's see. But you can kind of see the clean spot there, where it used to be to where it is now. It's actually a little bit too far back. I think I missed. And it's not exactly even left to right. It's not centered. So, I mean, one of these days when I've got all this free time, I'll pull it out and put it in square, or cut it out and build a new one. Whatever. That's it as far as the body goes. That was the one main modification, was to do the cross member, and then it's just a couple of mounts to hang the diff off of. That originally was just a piece of angle iron that was welded up in between, but now it's a bolting affair. I've got 2 bolts on either side. I could climb under there, but it's not very well lit. But I'm going to turn around and talk about the trailing arm brackets. So this is a first gen Honda CR-V, wheel bearing and hub with ARP ARP studs pressed in. The caliper bracket, built that from scratch so I could run discs on the rear. I did have to modify this. So there's, this bit stands up a little bit proud. Well, I mean, it is a little bit proud right now. But it's longer, and straight off the shelf it'll contact on the axle here, on the axle flange, if you try to bolt it together. So I ended up grinding it down to where it wouldn't contact, but the seal on the axle here isn't quite wide enough to make contact and keep this as clean as it could be. So I'll end up having to replace that sometime soon. There's no play in it, it doesn't grind, but I kind of assumed when I put it together that it would be one of those items that gets replaced every couple seasons. It's like it's the whole assembly. Like there's no bearing to be pressed in or out of this. You just buy the whole unit and bolt it on and press the hub into it. I think it's $150 or something. Anyway, that's the Honda CR-V bearing. It's wider and larger than the old wagon wheel bearing, which actually sat in this. This used to have a snout that the bearing pressed into, and there was a circlip to hold the bearing in there, and then you'd press the hub into this, and this would have to be all bolted together to press the hub on. Whereas with this setup, since the bearing bolts on the front side of the arm, and the arm gets sandwiched between this, it just makes it a whole lot easier to put to service, since you don't have to press the hub in and out to remove the bearing from the trailing arm. But yeah, so that all got trimmed down, trimmed flat, so these could bolt together. Didn't have to change the bolt pattern. That's all the same between the old Civic wagon and the CR-V. Axle diameter, so the spline diameter, that's the same between the old wagon and the CR-V. So that's how I'm able to run off-the-shelf axles with the newer parts. Yeah, it pretty much covers the modifications to run the arms. Didn't have to change anything for the toe link because I'm running the stock Civic arm from the main bushing forward. And the last thing I didn't change that I should change is moving this back. Because right now the strut kind of goes in at an angle, and as it compresses, it kind of wants to flex one way or the other, and creates a lot of wear inside the barrel. With the piston and the barrel make a lot of contact, and they wear out prematurely. So I would have to cut this out, move it back to line it up so it's a straight shot and there's no deflection. But that's another project for another day. Man, I need to wire brush that and clean that up before I put it all back together. Let's see if that happens. Gravel setup was designed to not run with a bar, so I'm taking the bar out, especially that big old bar. I think it's a 23 millimeter. It's out of an Integra Type R. CR-V, Integra Type R, Civic wagon, Type R, Civic wagon, Type R. Calipers they're off an RSX, but apparently the rear calipers on the RSX and the Type R are the same. RSX calipers, RSX rear rotor, Hawk blue pads, fantastic pads, dusty as fuck, but stop really, really nice. I've yet to experience any brake fade with those. Blued the rotors at one event, but I didn't notice anything at the pedal. But yeah, it's been a little bit of a project. And then I'll start bolting it all back together. This is gonna be fun. this way.